Welcome to the Commerce Tomorrow podcast, your one stop to learn about the technology that's powering the future of commerce. Here are your hosts, Dirk and Kelly.
Welcome to another episode of Commerce Tomorrow. I am joined by my co-host, Dirk, and we are pleased to be joined by Alex Ringsdorff, who is VP of Corporate Development at NewStore. Welcome, Alex.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me.
You want to start by giving our listeners just a little bit of background on who you are and where you came from, and I guess maybe just a little narrative about your career?
Sure, happy to. So I'm Alex. I'm originally born in Hanover, Germany, 33 years old now, and I do live in Boston. So my background, maybe very quickly, I've been in e-commerce technology since 2001. Actually started quite early, still out of school, kind of programming myself in the early days, but then kind of starting a business early on and convinced the Guardians Court at the age of 16 to be allowed to become an entrepreneur. And that's when we started with a small team, bespoke e-commerce solutions, actually. And that did grow into an SI, basically an agency in Germany, which specialized in Magento since 2007 early days. And we had an agency with about 40 people running some brands across Europe also for some US customers at that time. Actually, VF Corporation, we did their brands across Europe. And that agency got acquired by a larger agency group, Sinner Schrader. And that was in 2011. And that's when I actually started to look into new adventures. And I had about a year where I joined a big marketplace in Germany called Trattoria back then, and did the checkout product for them. And they were, during that time, acquired by Rakuten from Japan. And so that was an interesting experience. And after that, I kind of felt the need to go into startup again and founded a company called Couch Commerce, which was in early 2012. And that was a SaaS platform to basically guide online shops into post-PC commerce age. We did web app applications early on, kind of a mobile e-commerce platform. And that e-commerce platform then 3 years later got acquired by Stephan Schambach. And we then started NewStore, which is a company where I'm working today. So that was a very quick run through.
Sounds for the summary, Alex. Let's quickly get back to the beginning of that. As you just mentioned, when you had been 16, you needed to get the permission from court, basically. So I assume that you are counted fully responsible to work as an entrepreneur and can make signatures and so on. What did your parents say at that time when you said, okay, I'm still at school and now I make my own company that I'm fully responsible for?
Yeah, it was actually funny because kind of the backstory to that is that at age 13, 14, I kind of started sending out my first invoices for work I was doing, kind of bespoke web development. And then kind of my father just handled it through his kind of company, or personally, he kind of sent those out in his name. And when I was 16, at that point, basically it became too much that he said we should look into making that kind of a company, or basically running it through me. And so they were quite supportive, I have to say, even though at that point, so in Germany, it's like that. You have to take both of your parents, actually, go to court together with them. And then you have to promise that this wouldn't have any implications on your school work and other stuff, which obviously...
Yeah, what was the reality? So looking back now, what was the reality? Did it change anything?
Yeah, I think it had huge implications, yes. So obviously I was not interested in school, or even less interested in school. I was into physics and mathematics and everything. And I didn't really spend a lot of time on it, right? Because I think once we had a small group of people working together, obviously we're really excited about it. And I still finished school, right? So I did my Abitur and so A-level basically in Germany. I pushed through that. At some point, I was thinking about even dropping out of that, but I actually finished it. And afterwards, I'm happy I did. But no, my parents are great. They both have their own businesses. So I think they are very entrepreneurial themselves, and we're very supportive of that.
And at the end, everything worked out, right? So after you sold the agency to Sinner Schrader, I think it was a proven point that that it was the right decision, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I would say even earlier we were pretty sure that it was a good way to go. And for me, it was like you can probably always go to university at a later point, but if you have kind of an opportunity to work with people, great people and you're passionate about what you do in an entrepreneurial way, that was something I wouldn't have missed.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about Couch Commerce, right? Because you ended up selling that to Stephan, and he's a really well-known guy, and maybe it'd be worthwhile just to explain a little bit more about Couch Commerce and the market niche that you serve there. So I think it's a really good story. And then also just talk about Stephan and how you were able to connect with him both professionally and personally, and where that's gotten you to now.
Yeah, very happy. So to elaborate on that, so basically Couch Commerce, it's a funny story. It again involves actually my mother, because in 2011 I did buy an iPad for her, which actually was kind of her first computer, if you want. So she wasn't even using email or anything before that, and it kind of became her primary computer within just a week or so, and she used it almost every day. And at that time, obviously, 1 year after the iPad was on the market, really, you didn't really find any optimized websites or especially e-commerce shops for it. So I saw how frustrated she was, basically trying to do some online shopping. And at that point, obviously, having the e-commerce background and also being in touch with quite some brands still, we saw that there was already about like 5% mobile traffic, let's say the smartphones you had at that point, including iPad. And we were thinking, this, especially iPad, would maybe get a lot of traction. So it was only 1 year out, right? So you didn't really know if it would be as successful as the iPhone or smartphones in general, but we thought it would be a nice form factor. So basically when we started the team around that, we said, let's build a product which is kind of a SaaS turnkey product that turns these existing online shops out there into something that works better for touch interfaces, maybe on a smartphone or on an iPad. And that's how we basically started. And by couchcommerce.com, the domain, I actually bought it for small money from somebody from Texas in 2011. And PayPal at some point in 2012 just started using Couch Commerce as a term for basically shopping on your tablet. So we were lucky, I have to say, that they actually picked up the term, and suddenly kind of we had a little bit of attention on the small startup we did, because it just happened to be named after that. And so we did some bootstrapping actually then with 3 co-founders, did some consulting to start the company, and then we got angel investments in 2012 from a business angel group called Venturepreneurs, about 150,000 euros. And we did a seed round for 1.2 million euros in 2013. And then we had about like 500 shops running, stores running. So it was working, but we could already see like we couldn't really pull it off with the venture money we had available to bring it with the smaller shops into something that could work long term. So we started to work with larger accounts again, like I did as well in my agency days. And that worked quite well. So we stabilized the company, and we also had a quite kind of more robust kind of turnover. It was profitable at that point, and we wanted to raise a Series A, which, in Germany is important. You actually make money when you raise a Series A. And that's when I was introduced to Stephan. And so Stephan, I was actually then very excited to be able to pitch him, and I wanted to get him on board as an investor for Couch Commerce to basically roll that out in a larger scheme and grow the team. And at this point, he said like he really loved what we did and he loved the team and everything, but he had an idea which was kind of covering what we did at Couch Commerce, but much more, and actually extending that into retail much further. And he basically asked if I and the team, if we would be willing to join forces with him and start that new company, which then didn't have a name, but today it's known as NewStore. Stephan Schambach, he's known in Germany, is very well known as kind of the people say kind of the German Bill Gates. So he did two very successful e-commerce companies. I think one, Intershop, is maybe the first one that had a kind of shopping cart and basically e-commerce system available on the market already in 95, and IPO'd. And then kind of that was, I think, like 99. And then after that, he also built basically taking kind of a core from Intershop, but building a new company, a SaaS company in the US here in Boston, actually, and IPO'd that in 2012. And that was Demandware, which in 2016 got acquired by Salesforce.
What would you say is the main vision that Stephan has for NewStore and ambition? It's definitely not the money, right? So after the great success with Intershop that he had, and then the even bigger success now with Demandware that now belongs to Salesforce, doing it again for the third time, you really need to have passion for it. And as far as I know you personally, I think you share that, but if you could share that with our listeners, what would you say is the main vision and passion to do it again now with NewStore, focusing more on the mobile aspects of commerce?
Yeah, I have to say that exactly this was also what I was most curious about, kind of when he proposed starting a new company or building a new company, and that I was imagining myself in his shoes and was thinking, oh, why do it again, right? And it's amazing how passionate he is about it. I have to say, it's kind of his number one priority. He's working like crazy. He's just so eager to kind of, do it again and kind of even bigger and show everybody kind of what how retail should be in the future. And I think he just realized that if he wouldn't do it, maybe somebody else would do it at some point. But as he's so passionate about it, he just thought he needs to do it, and he really wanted to do it. And since starting that has what surprised me, a pretty laser focus on NewStore, because obviously he had also a lot of other investments, was business angel as well, but he basically cut that all back, very laser focused on NewStore now. And so I have to say that it's actually a pretty unique situation for me, being able to work with somebody who is, investor at the same time, experienced like this, and at the same time, obviously heading a startup. Has been quite a ride and exciting so far, and continues to be. But he's just very excited about it, I have to say. And he, on a side note, he always says like, well, there's really nothing else he can do that well, so he better does this again. So he's just very excited about it.
No, you need that passion for sure. I guess before we get into NewStore, you have a great title. So you're VP of Corporate Development, but I don't think a lot of people understand what that is. Can you just explain a little bit about your role to our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So basically so I'm part of the executive management team. So we have a management team at NewStore, and it's obviously that management team is very, very senior and experienced. They are all basically have experience of IPOing companies, have seen companies, enterprise SaaS companies growing to a large scale. And within that group, basically, I'm kind of the one who is looking into when we are developing market strategies and how we position the company basically to achieve the long-term growth. And that involves mainly my main focus on the strategic alliances. So say maybe partners we work with or that complement NewStore, or where we see that we need to partner to be able to deliver the experience we want to basically present to the market, to the consumers and associates. And that includes the technology partnerships programs we are launching this year for technology partners as well. But also, on the other hand, when you speak public about the company with investors, for example, investor relationships, I handle together with the CFO, obviously, and also, which is obviously not such a big part yet, but it could become is the M&A. So actually, when we maybe acquire small companies or talk to them on a close partnership level.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. But it's interesting though, because you have a technical background, but you're able to kind of step back and look at the market in terms of who's available and how all the different pieces fit together. So I've always found that to be a very interesting role.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so it's but I have to add that I was in running product marketing for NewStore in the beginning when we started the company, and then kind of was helping to position it there until about 1.5 years from now. And when I then moved into the corporate development role, just saying because it's more diverse and you can basically do more things than just being in, let's say, working in one department. And that was my main incentive of going in that direction. And also, as you say, yes, there's a lot of technical aspects when you talk to partners, how you integrate, how to turn kind of prototypes into reality, and how to build the platform in a way that it's supportive of that.
And, you've had a long time now to look at the market, right? You've been at this, since the 90s? So basically the beginning. How has commerce changed over your career?
Yeah, I have to say it changed a lot. So it's I obviously started in the more bespoke custom solution area. So the kind of the first solutions we did was basically on a lamps setup, and where we basically run which PHP MyScale. Nice front end for computer components retailer that was in Manchester back then, I think 2005, 2006. And already kind of 40 million pound turnover, but this was very custom built in front of a Microsoft Dynamics system in the background. And from there, then it started to move into more standardized software, where we saw obviously the big players in the market. Maybe Hybris or Intershop, but then the exciting days of Magento, kind of bringing that innovation to more people and open source community, and then the shift to SaaS, really where it was clear. I remember these epic fights. I think that was even very public in blogs going back and forth between, even that was Stephan back then, I think, at Demandware, and Roy from Magento. So they're kind of discussing what is a better thing for the future. Is it open source, or is it SaaS, or is it a cloud? And then at some point now everybody said, okay, something that runs on servers in a cloud and with APIs is probably better and more scalable. So that kind of became common knowledge with everything running in the cloud. And now it's, for me, it's more like this knowledge and the technology that we all know from the e-commerce, that this takes over more aspects of retail and kind of expands into the store and into other areas. And that, I think, is the exciting thing that is happening right now, where you typically see IT landscapes that are very old and software and hardware that can only be updated, I don't know, once a year with a little bit of features. And this is something that is changing dramatically right now. Consumerization of devices in the retail field, where people really want to work with an up-to-date iPhone instead of an bulky old device and all these things. I think that is what I see as being exciting and how commerce has changed.
I think this is a good chance now to talk a little bit about NewStore. Alex, maybe you can give us a quick summary of what NewStore is doing and what NewStore is not doing, because I think that most people don't know exactly what NewStore does and what it not does. I think POS everybody has heard, but even when I remember a year ago when we sat down and I thought that you are doing A, and you said, yeah, maybe a little bit, but actually we're focusing more on B. And this is what we see most important. What I have seen, I think this counts for many people that are listening here.
Sure, yeah. So I think, like, from the marketing side, what we say is that we basically make it easy for retailers to provide the store experience of Apple. So when you walk into an Apple store, how associates work with you there and how they help you, with the shopping convenience of Amazon. So like an Amazon Prime now, or the convenience you find there. And this obviously sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. And we have also learned over the years, I think, to better position and present what is the core of our offering. And what you can see is that we have built a SaaS platform basically that runs that is able to run retailers and brands and delivers omnichannel as a cloud, if you want. And the core components, speaking in the components that are really core. is the OMS, the order management system behind that, together with the transaction engine and an MPOS. So these core components are the ones that we provide. And in the US, for example, today you have stores that are running purely on a NewStore IT stack in store. So there's basically the main components they use to run these stores and operate them is on iPhones and our apps on iPhones together with a payment device. And this is a core component of these stores. So it's very comparable to an Apple retail store if you walk in there. And basically then behind the scenes, we have we have in the cloud the OMS, which is then integrated into the system landscape. And that is typically, obviously, an e-commerce system that is already with a retailer. There's an ERP system that is already there and plenty of other systems where we need to integrate against. And what people see of NewStore are basically two apps that people see, and those are facing the associates. So the associates in the store are working with two apps that we provide, and it's an associate app and the fulfillment app. That's how they're called. And these can be obviously, there can be plenty of other apps that run in parallel on these iPhones, for example, that do very specialized features and are integrated against our apps. But the things we do well and we are specialized on is, on the one hand, there again, what is around order management, so the fulfillment app. So this does everything from basically checkout of the customer, on-demand delivery, pick up in store or basically collect in store functionality, automatic handover to an on-demand courier like in Deliv, for example, and also guides the associate towards a pick and pack process. If inventory from the store needs to be made available to customers, maybe from another store or from the web or mobile, doesn't really matter. So the associate can help them by using this app. And then there's some basic clienteling functionality we offer in the associate app, where basically we have customer profiles and you can browse the catalog. And we have a basket concept behind that, which allows a kind of omnichannel basket. So products that are available on site or that are not available on site in one basket service, so that you can easily check out a customer. And I know it's a lot, but this is basically the core of the platform, and we are partnering around that.
I see a huge demand for that, especially as the retail experience out there is, I have to say, quite poor as many brands. Just yesterday, we had been with the family at the mall for some little shopping, and it wasn't. I wasn't impressed. Let me formulate it like that. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to be improved. But one question that comes to my mind there is. So though I see a huge demand for that, why don't large brands and retailers develop the app on top of their existing commerce platform? So where do they benefit from NewStore instead of doing that themselves? Because I would argue that, okay, I already have my shopping system, I have my ERP, so I make a little app and then maybe I get there. Where am I wrong?
No, I think this is a typical path towards solving these consumer demands today, right? So if you, for example, want to enable an endless aisle use case, so meaning within the store, you make the inventory from a warehouse available and give associates the opportunity to sell that to a consumer. Yes, you can probably build a small app and there are also point solutions or solutions out there that do exactly that, where you show the catalog and then you have basically an e-commerce checkout, so a very similar checkout as you have on the website, and then an order is being placed in the warehouse and that's being sent to the consumer at home. So that might be a very narrow scenario which you are able to realize doing that. And I think some people have done that very successfully. The really hard part is when it comes towards having the availability, the inventory availability also mixed in, and the different fulfillment methods, meaning where you really need an order management and available to promise information right at that point. And typically through the e-commerce system, that information is not available. So it wouldn't know, for example, what exactly is the inventory level of my other stores. So that is typically not available in an e-commerce system. And you would typically not have an integration in last mile on-demand couriers, for example, as well, where you could call them automatically from that app. So when you build all that integration into an OMS, into on-demand couriers and all those services, this becomes quite a big project. And you can invest obviously millions in building those systems in-house, and there are good examples of great brands like a Sephora or Nordstrom that have huge development teams in-house and that have built great apps for the associates that do a great job. Apple is the same; they also developed in-house apps. But for the majority of even the larger brands, a SaaS model where you basically benefit from updates and new features over time and don't have to do the upfront investment, but basically are on a SaaS plan and on a shared success model is more interesting when it comes to these use cases and omni-channel services. And that's what we've discovered and where we see that it resonates well with brands.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So, and maybe this is a US versus German thing, but can you define, just for the record, what clienteling is and also how you define that relative to mobile point of sale?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Dirk and I were having this discussion the other day, and so maybe you can help settle an argument.
Yeah, we are a German group here, right? So Alex is from Germany. Kelly, you have your last name is German, so I know that at every airport that we are traveling here in Europe, they think you're German, and I'm German. So already a German podcast now. But yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I mean, like, obviously it's a broad spectrum of functionality that falls under clienteling, but I think like the basic functionality of clienteling, at least how we see it and defined it, is that you have something like a customer profile, the activity of a customer, purchase history, and some actionable insights. So this is, for example, also the scope of a smaller scope, what we offer as part of our associate app. But then there is much deeper clienteling functionality where, for example, we also partner with other companies who are really good at it. And this is, for example, everything around appointment management, recommendations, outreach, associate task management, templates, campaigning, look building. So all these things that basically lead towards a basket or a sale and are based up on around appointment booking or customer profile. So that's how I would kind of define clienteling and the functionalities around that. And I see that some players are, for example, very specialized in appointment management, and they have 1,000 services around that, around appointment management. And that is all falls under the category of clienteling for them. And mobile POS or mobile checkout, basically, I would describe as what some already do with some apps in store, and it's basically you use a mobile POS device, for example, from Verifone. They offer these devices and they connect via the network, so via Bluetooth, for example. They connect to an iPad, for example, an iPhone, and you can check out the consumer right on the spot without basically having to walk over to a cash register. So that's the kind of mobile POS you see in the market today. What we also describe under mPOS as a category is when we check out a consumer in a store using existing payment methods on the consumer phone. So this is still pretty new to the market. We have it live with a few merchants, but it's something where you can imagine the sales associates collects your basket on the phone with products, for example, in the store, but maybe also some from another store, which will be delivered to you, and then is asking you if you want to utilize a payment method on your own phone to check out. And then the associate can hand over the card, the basket, which basically then can be checked out with, for example, Apple Pay or Venmo or PayPal or other pre-set up payment methods on the consumer phone. So this is also some trend we see under a mobile POS or mPOS, where you basically just utilize the smartphones that people already have in their hands. I hope that makes sense.
Where do you? Yes, no, absolutely. Where do you see the market that you are in with NewStore? You're a first mover, and where are the challenges? How's the adoption of customers? How huge is already the demand? How much do you still need to explain to them where the problems are, right? So as you're also creating this market, yes, the demand is there, but on some hand, you're creating the market. And I know hands-on from my experience that if you're a first mover in an industry, things sometimes take time. So where do you see your market right now going? And also in combination to the success of NewStore, which is, just if we see the huge funding rounds that you have received, things are going well, but I expect that behind the curtain, not everything is always easy.
Yeah, so it's that's true. We are definitely selling to early adopters still, which can be different companies. So there are kind of two categories we were mainly looking into, and the one are the companies that are very successfully growing and are kind of born digital or D2C companies. So there are a lot of brands that have started e-commerce only, for example, and they are growing very quickly and then realize they also need to open stores to be closer to their customers, to the communities, and basically sell across channels. And this is kind of the perfect kind of early adopter group for NewStore, because these brands, let's say, typically run between 50 and 200 stores in the US, and they have a strong online sales, e-commerce sales already, and they don't want to use kind of legacy IT systems or bulky systems and deploy, let's say, 4 or 5 IT systems to launch their stores and then be able to open a POS or manage those kind of processes in stores. So they are more likely to choose something like a NewStore as a basis platform to manage their inventory and the order flow and transactions and open these stores. So these are the ones that are where I would say we see the most traction today. But on the other hand, and that's quite funny, the large brands, the icons really, and I think so we didn't really publish a lot of the brands we're working with today, but one of them is published is Adidas. And so they, for example, the larger brands, they always look at these fast-growing D2C brands or digital native brands and look at them, how they do things and why are they so successful, and want to be a little bit more like them when it comes to being engaged with the consumer and delivering that kind of experience. So they are typically trapped a little bit in a complex legacy IT landscape where they kind of try to solve problems step by step, or kind of have budgets even, or departments that are separated between e-commerce and retail, and within that have a budget for a certain IT system, which today basically wouldn't be able to address a problem by itself just in one category. So they need to think more across departments and across these budgets and P&Ls, and maybe they have to be sometimes there have to be changes, like introducing new roles, like a chief digital officer, for example, then making sure that people from e-com and retail like each other and have the same incentives. And that's why in this category, you see typically that there are kind of then smaller brands in larger company or brand groups that try NewStore and roll it out to be able to see the end-to-end experience and prove it internally, and then introduce it step by step to the larger brands where it's more complex to roll it out because it touches more IT systems than just one. And I think that is obviously a challenge we have, but we overcome over time the more we have to show and the more brands see how successful it is once deployed, also by actually deploying it to smaller brands within brand groups.
Yeah, and I guess related to that, stepping back, I as a consumer, like Dirk, am consistently disappointed with the retail experience. There are a lot of surveys out there that show that people just don't trust store associates. They don't really add much value. It seems there might be a great .com experience or an app experience, but it doesn't ever really translate into the store. And I'm curious, how is it that other industries have been able to so thoroughly adapt to changes in technology, but retail itself just seems resistant to doing this? I mean, every store associate I expect to see, I should, as a consumer, have an iPad or a mobile device or something that makes them smarter than me. And as a consumer, I find that I have much more access to information than they do. So yes, there are integration challenges, of course, but why don't retailers just spend their money and get past those? Why is retail itself so backwards generally when it comes to technology?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I totally agree. Like typically today, and this is even true for the best brands and even true for Apple retail. When I walk in, they don't know if I have spent hundreds of thousands with them or maybe nothing. So they wouldn't be able to easily treat me according to my value towards that brand, right? And maybe, or especially when I talk about fashion or luxury goods, where we're focused on as a kind of vertical, the customer expectation is huge, right? So they really expect this the treatment they actually deserve based on the value to the company. And I totally agree that this is it's for some reason it has been slower to adapt there because and I think one reason is that the hardware that's being used and the update and improvement cycles are just so slow in retail, so that it's everything that is around POS and these old structures that are there, that they are only rarely touched and updated, and that they are just not open for these integrations that are needed to deliver that experience. And I think where it really changes now is where we see this whole trend of consumerization when it comes to devices in the retail environment, meaning that everybody realized that the sales associate just doesn't want to work anymore with a kind of bulky device or with bad user interfaces in a retail environment. They just want to use the smartphones they use anyhow all day long, and just being able to use a nice app and interface that then actually is easier and more convenient to use for them. And by introducing these smartphones or modern devices and iPhones and iPads into retail, suddenly there's a kind of platform from a hardware perspective where all these benefits that we already know from the consumer-facing aspect, like updates, the SaaS aspect of it, easily introducing new applications, connecting to other systems through all the technology in those phones, that this immediately becomes unlocked and available. And I think this is what we see right now slowly happening, and retailers becoming more open to introducing these devices into the retail landscape.
Talking about technology and everything that has changed in the last years, can you share with us, Alex, how you are developing at NewStore? So where do you develop? How do you do it? How often do you release? Share some insights about the architecture of the products, how that works. I think that would be interesting.
Sure, yeah. So maybe for context, so we are about 140 people in total in the company, and out of that, about 100 on R&D, so in product and engineering. And so we have a pretty big development team, and the majority of that team is based in Berlin, in Germany. We also have offices in Hanover and in Erfurt in Germany. And we have a small engineering team as well here in Boston. And I would say we have a fairly modern stack overall and way of working. So we work agile, we work in 2-week sprints. We have context teams who work in certain areas as teams between, typically a size between kind of 6 and maybe 10, 11 people. And they work fairly independent, I would say, towards the goals that product has kind of developed, identified with the field team, and then working towards this in 2-week sprint. And from a technology aspect, we use a lot of technology. So everything. So we run on AWS with the platform, but basically we use from a technology and programming landscape. When it comes through Python, but also on the consumer-facing side, where we build the apps with React Native, for example, to have customizable layers within Associate app, for example. But then we also have a purely native Swift-developed fulfillment app, for example, which is the one that's being used for the fulfillment requests on the iPhones of the Associates. So I would say you find a little bit of not everything, but a little bit of all the modern technologies people like to work with at NewStore across the different areas and teams.
No, that's very interesting. Sounds like a very modern stack. Glad to hear. So I guess final question from me, and then I'll turn it over to Dirk and we can wrap this up. But what are some interesting tech trends you're seeing out there with brands and retailers? What's some cool stuff that's being actually piloted in production that's not just for conferences and for talks, right? What's actually, what interesting things are actually being done out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we ran into each other at Shop Talk this year as well, and there was the Sunday I spent like 4 hours just listening to all these startup pitches from companies working in retail and basically presenting their the services they have and what and products they have to the retailers. And what kind of stuck out for me is that everybody I talked to from the brands and retailers were pretty excited to actually experiment, maybe even with all of these startups or most of them. But it's more limited by the way they can integrate and easily run these experiments today. So it's I see, for example, that voice is something where everybody talks about and everybody likes to experiment with skills for Alexa or whatever. But they see themselves pretty limited in the way they can deploy this without making it a huge project. When they are not on a fairly modern platform where they have at least some APIs they can integrate against. But the areas I see that excite me most and I see people working with are actually around voice. So I think this is going to become very important in the future. We are not really there yet totally, but I have seen a lot of great applications that are quite narrow and then basically can help fulfill certain needs. So I think that is something that is definitely worth watching and experimenting, as well as AR. So I'm not so bullish about VR because I think maybe for gaming it's great, but in retail aspects and everything that has to do with the next generation of devices we carry around with us, I'm quite certain that AR is going to have a big role in that. And with the AR kit and everything that is available now, for example, from Apple, you can already see obviously that they're working towards a different kind of device that's going to be available around exposing that kind of additional layer on top of what I see right now in front of me. And I think this is going to play a huge role. So everything what you can do and play around with that is pretty amazing. I've seen it in maybe not the core brands and retailers, but it all is becoming kind of experiences. And I saw a presentation from Porsche, so from Porsche, where you basically could virtually sit in a car and equip it with all your configuration you want to have, for example, and see that immediately through a VR view, where in a way that you couldn't do it before, just in front of a screen, for example. And the same thing I've seen with the North Face, for example, and other brands, kind of showing their equipment or additional information actually in a retail environment. So I think these are cool things, and I know you guys are also experimenting around that, which I'm pretty excited about. And for a little bit more on the side where we see the stores involved and the associates, there's one thing that has been launched by Apple this year and is actually live now since Q1 with a few brands, and that's called Apple Business Chat. So this is something I'm also quite excited about, because what this does is it basically delivers a branded iMessage dialogue with your favorite brand right on the iPhone in the iMessage dialogue. And what it does is that you can reach out to a brand, for example, and get reply directly in the iMessage window, and then have an enriched and more informed conversation than it is typically with just when you reach out to support. And obviously, as people love texting and communicate through those kind of experiences, I think this will become very important when you interact with brands. May it be may it be a little bit even around transactions or commerce, but also all the other use cases you can imagine where you want to reach out to your brands. So I think these are the areas I'm most excited about.
I think we will see a lot of great things coming out this and also the next years that will change a lot how we experience brands and retailers and how we shop. And I think it's more than time for that, given the retail experience that we see offline at a couple of companies. So, well, we are running out of time. Alex, thank you so much for sharing all your insights on e-commerce and how you with NewStore are revolutionizing the POS. We wish you continued success with everything that's coming up. And thanks for everybody else for listening to this episode. If you are looking out for other episodes, please check out our website on commercetomorrow.com. There's a lot more episodes now available. Hope you enjoy them. And we wish you all a great day. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks.